Hello everyone, welcome back for another edition of Virtual Teen Yoga. I'm your instructor Mike and I'm happy to have you all watching this particular practice. And what I was thinking about doing for this teen yoga class is yoga for athletes. I know this is it's a hot topic. How can I stretch my body for a certain activity, like for baseball, for basketball, for football, soccer, whatever sport you are playing? There's going to be something involved in this practice specifically for you. I'll mention ways that we constantly use these parts of our bodies. A lot of it's going to be the hips. We might do a little bit for our shoulders as well with so many throwing activities. We want to make sure that we loosen up the shoulders a little bit. But a lot of it, again, primarily for the hips. Most motions in sports are going to take place in that area. I mean, it's not like you don't use other joints, but a lot of your power for the majority of sports will derive from your hips. And so we'll begin our practice in a comfortable position. If you'd like to, you can just sit down on the floor. You can lay down on a yoga mat if you got one. If not, just lay on some carpet, just wherever you're comfortable. And then go there and close your eyes. Nothing to see at this point, just more to feel and pay attention to. And I want you to pay attention to your breath by breathing low in your belly, low in your diaphragm. If you ever want to double check if you're doing this correctly, place a hand on your stomach below your belly button. You're going to feel the stomach expand when you take an inhale. It will contract when you take an exhale. And this is belly breathing. It's the breathing technique that I recommend for our practice, especially for a yin stretching style of practice. We want to slow things down. And breathing low in your diaphragm is going to help with that. And what I had mentioned we're doing today, again, yin yoga is a gentle and passive style of yoga where you stretch the body. But we're doing specific stretches today. We're doing a particular series for athletes. So a lot of hips, again, and some shoulders. But during this practice, if you find yourself struggling, or maybe you're just really uncomfortable in some of these poses, a few things that I would suggest. Definitely one, let experience be your guide. If your body is telling you it's too much of something, then back off from it, because I don't want you to hurt yourself, right? We always want to be mindful of what exactly our body is going through. But if you feel comfortable with these, you do your thing because it's your body, it is your practice. And if you find out that you can't do a pose a certain way, listen up to modifications that I give you. I will constantly shout out different ways to work your body, just to see what your body may or may not need. When you're ready, you can go ahead and open your eyes. And we're going to start this off just kind of loosening up the hips and spine by some gentle movement. I want you to lay on your back with this one. Just kind of rock up and down on your spine and side to side, using your intuition here. There's no right or wrong on this. It's kind of like yawning and stretching. Nobody can teach you how to yawn and stretch. You just kind of do that. And this is very similar in that nature. Just moving to wherever you need to. Maybe even trying to crack your back here and there. You never know, you might be able to. If not, though, it's all right. But we're going to start this one off with our shoulders to begin. And we'll do the same thing, loosening up the shoulders. I want you to just take your hands, shoulder blades, and rotate them. Nothing crazy. Right? We just want to make sure that these are loose and ready to go for the other things that we're going to do. Make sure you go both ways. Right? You always want to go both ways. Can't just do one side, not the other. Leads to energetic imbalance. And just kind of shake it off when you're ready. Get those arms loose. And then we're going to do what's called the eagle arm pose. And the eagle arm pose is a stretch for the back of your shoulder. We'll all do it on the same page because it's just easier for me to explain. So we'll do it on the back left shoulder. So what you're going to do here is have your left arm on top of your right. Your elbows are actually going to stack here. If you can, grab your hands, and if not, it's fine. You would just straighten your left arm. But what I want you to do here is pull your left arm away from it. So if you're if you got your left arm getting the stretch, you pull it to the right, right? We have to pull it away from the actual socket itself to get the stretch in the back left side of your shoulder. And these are for the traps, the posterior deltoids, the rhomboids, right? Lots and lots of shoulder muscles that go here and all the connective tissues that hold them together. It's really important to work. It's just an area that tends to get tight. Again, for anybody who does any throwing activity, you know, if you play football and you throw the ball around like a quarterback, or if you play baseball or anything that involves throwing, they're going to use these muscles, right? Remember to breathe with it too. And when you're ready, just real slow, let the arm out. Go ahead and move it around a little bit. Shake it off. Ever so slightly. And then the other side. And if you're on the same page as me, it is now the right arm on top of your left. Elbows stacked. Grab the hands if you can. And if not, it's fine. You would straighten the right arm, but you're going to pull the right arm away. So if you're stretching the right shoulder, you're going to pull the right arm to the left side of your body, wherever you need to be. But two sides are different. So if you feel like you don't need as much on this side, it's really not abnormal. But it might be the opposite. You know, maybe this is the side that does need more. There's lots of reasons as to why two sides are different. But a big one, especially if you're an athlete, is overcompensation and having a dominant side. You know, the side that you use most often, that a lot of times can be the tighter side. So for me, I'm typically right-handed. So my right shoulder tends to be a little bit tighter than my left. And if you're ready, just real slow, again, let it out. Move it around a little bit. Shake it off. And we're going to do what's called the broken wing pose next. This is a rotator cuff stretch right over the top of your shoulder. It's actually called the supraspinatus tendon if you want to be anatomically correct about it. But again, broad stretch over the top of your shoulder. And we're going to do one at a time by laying down in this one. So you're going to lay on your back. Doesn't matter which side you start with. You'll have one hand under your back with your palm facing down. So the palm is actually going to be on the floor here. And the arm that's behind your back, this is the shoulder that's going to get a stretch. And if you need to increase this one, you got to slide your hand higher up the back. If you got to decrease it, it needs to go lower down the back, or maybe even go to the sides, like the left side of your back or to the right side. So wherever you're most comfortable, right? Please don't overdo any of these stretches, especially this one. Rotator cuffs, you know, they suffer a lot of damage. You know, any activity that involves your arms is going to use this tendon, which is why it often wears down, right? Doesn't matter what sport you are playing, right? Anything that involves your upper body will use this tendon. That's why people need rotator cuff surgery all the time. We'll say if you're ready though, there's your time. Just really slowly roll away from the arm and just let it out for a moment. Try to feel the difference between the two sides. You've only stretched that one, so I'm certain it feels different than the other. Now when you're ready, other side, whatever side you happen to be on, just make sure to see how remember your hand is behind your back and your palm will face the floor here. So you lay on it, and this is it. Now, two sides are different. So if you get here and you notice that it is not abnormal, you might find out that this side doesn't move as much. Maybe you can't get it up as high. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe this one, it's very high up your back. It's up towards your neck. You know, just play around with that. But again, lifting the hand up the back will increase. Lowering the hand down the back will decrease. And going to the sides as well may or may not increase the intensity or not. Who knows though, right? We just never know unless we try it for ourselves. That's the whole point of learning through experience. It's to try it and see what works and just learn maybe why this side does it differently. And again, overcompensation and being tighter on one side is very common, but another thing is being asymmetrical with our skeleton. So the two sides of our own bones are not shaped the same. So we will move differently fundamentally because of the bones. When you're ready, roll away from the arm and just really slowly let it out. Take a moment. So here is where we start to transition into our hips and into our spine, but we're going to throw in one more shoulder stretch. And it's going to be for the inside of the shoulder. You know, we've done the outside, we've done the back side, we have to do the front side of this. So we're going to do it in a twist form. Now what we're going to do, maybe we'll do it on the same page. Again, easier for me to explain. You're going to lay on your back, bring your knees up to the chest, twist your legs over to the left, and you're going to lay them on the floor. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to show you the modification for the upper body, which is taking your arm out to the side, or sometimes arms out to the T with this. But the intended stretch for the shoulder, it's going to be your right chest and shoulder. If you're twisting left, that is, right? It's always going away from it, but it's a really nice broad chest and shoulder opener. Once again, really important to work. But breathe while you're here. And not only are you going to feel this broad stretch, you'll feel your side body. Again, this one too, nice and broad here. And again, we had talked about working the hips. So think of how many activities require you to twist your body, right? Every single sport, anything that you play will require twisting your core, your spine, your hips, right? All of those areas. So it's just really important to keep up on that maintenance. You know, as we age, or you know, if we're just someone who does a lot of strengthening activities, we're going to tighten up, right? The hips are usually the area, especially the core, especially with the pelvis, right? So we want to make sure that we stay mobile here. When you're ready, very slowly unwind from the twist. And just take your time out. Move the arm around if you need to. You might. When you're ready, we're going to do the other side. If you're on the same page as me with this twist, you're now twisting to your right to stretch the lower left side of the back, but also the inside of the left chest and shoulder, right? This is one of the intended areas to really open this particular area up. Two sides are different, so if you get here and notice that, it's not abnormal. You know, maybe on this side, you can twist really far. Or maybe not. Maybe this is the side, again, you got some limited mobility, and you got to kind of modify this, right? But don't worry about being perfectly aligned on those two sides, because you're never going to be, right? We just mentioned this. The two sides of your skeleton aren't shaped the same. So because of that, you will never align the same way in any activity. And it's not just in yoga. This implies every exercise, every activity you can ever do. And it's really interesting to see those differences. And actually, I'll kind of demonstrate that once I get out of this particular pose, because I just want to show you how different those two sides can be. I mean, like to the point where it's blatantly obvious. But again, important to know, because the more you know about your skeleton, the less likely you are to injure your joints. And the reason why it's so important to know what our bones can do is because nobody else visually can tell whether or not something hurts you. But if you know what exactly your limits are, you can prevent overextension. Right? You got to trust yourself on that though, because no coach, can tell you that what you're feeling. Now when you're ready, slowly unwind. Right, it's really slow, taking your time on out here. Lay down a little bit if you need to. Sometimes you want to lay flat or just keep your knees bent and feet on the floor. wherever you're most comfortable. Let's take a moment. I really quickly wanted to demonstrate how different two sides can be. And for me, this is pretty obvious. And for a long time, I mean, for 18 years of my life before I started doing yoga, I was an athlete and I was very competitive at what I did. And I always think back specifically to one injury that I had. When I was in 8th grade, I managed to sprain my wrist directly on my growth plate, on my right side here. So it was right around here in the wrist. And when I had the x-ray done, nothing really came up other than the doctor telling me, well, if it hurts here, it's probably a sprain. And where I was pointing, again, directly on the growth plate, he told me if I grew up and I had one hand, one arm bigger than the other, then that would be why. So again, this injury happened on my right hand, right on the growth plate. And it affected not only just my wrist, but my actual hand as well. Let me show you how, right? So I'm gonna line them up. And you see how different, how much bigger my left hand is than my right? Significantly different. And not only that, if I try to line my elbows up, right, you can see there's a significant difference in length when it comes to my actual ulna on my right side versus my left. Again, he told me this side, my right side, would be smaller than the other. And what's interesting, again, being right-handed, had, maybe I had been a little bit more ambidextrous, maybe I would have switched over to using things on my left side. If I was going to throw a baseball, imagine how much more control I'd have if I had the longer fingers working, if I had the longer arm working, right? So it's just like little things like that that really makes the difference in ourselves. Now that's a very extreme case, but these differences are going to be there for you. You probably have a little bit of that already in yourself without even spraining a growth plate. Interesting stuff, right? We're going to do a few more things for our hips. We'll probably do maybe 2 more poses, and then we have to do just a back bend just to keep maintaining the spine itself. If you're ever going to do any kind of stretching practice, doing a back bend is really essential just to to loosen up your spine and keep it loose. But we'll start it off with forward bends, right? If you're going to bend forward, you'll bend backward after. But the first one that we're going to do is for the inner thighs, right? Again, hip opener here. This is called the butterfly pose. You got the soles, the feet brought together in front of you. You fall around in the pose to get to your inner thighs. You stretch your back as well. The only thing that you have to be mindful of here is how do your knees feel. If you're doing this pose and you say, I actually do kind of feel more knee pain than inner thigh, or maybe I feel more hip pain, anything that's localized is overstretching, in which case you're probably going to want to just try out something different. It's called a dragonfly pose. You spread out your legs, you lean forward. You get the inner thighs, get your back, you get a bonus hamstring. Now, I was actually feeling a little bit more here in butterfly, so I'm going to stay here. Don't worry about how you do it. If it's more comfortable to do the other pose, then do it, right? Don't push your body through unnecessary pain, which is something I really, really want to emphasize is what is a therapeutic and a necessary kind of pain that would make me more flexible or just make me stronger. And that kind of pain is called tension. Anything that's kind of broad where you can wave your hand to it, say, yeah, this like whole thing is working. In this particular practice, it's a stretch, but it also takes place in strengthening. If you're ever doing like weightlifting, let's say you're doing a bicep curl, right? You're still feeling tension here in your bicep, but you're just doing this with rhythm and repetition, right? You're going back and forth with that because that's what builds muscles. But holding a pose for a while in a relaxed fashion is what increases flexibility, right? So we constantly have to go back and forth between strengthening and stretching. But the pain that you want is tension, the broad pain. It's like 90% of any practice, that's what you want to feel. And it's what you can change, right? If you want to make it more flexible, you hold a pose for a while. You endure the tension pain by holding a gentle pose. If you want to get stronger, you use tension pain with rhythm and repetition because it will build those muscles. When you are ready, we'll say it's time. Just use your hands real slow. Push yourself on out, lean back, lay down, take your time on that. Short breather here, just to lay down. And you can be flat if you'd like to. Keep those knees bent, feeling forward, just wherever you're most comfortable. We're gonna stretch the hips just one more time. And the area that I want to specifically work, it's called your hip flexors. It's a group of muscles up towards the top of your pelvis. A lot of athletes are going to endure tightness in these muscles. And what it does, and this is something that's really natural, so don't think like it's a really bad thing that this is happening. But when these muscles up towards the top of your pelvis, your hip flexors, when they get too tight, they'll start pulling your pelvis forward. This is called an anterior tilt. And what happens is when that pelvis starts going too far forward, you start feeling back pain. It's called L5-S1. It's the lumbar, right where it meets your sacrum. So imagine it's at the very base of your spine, but also right there where it meets the hips. And when that starts going out of line, you start feeling significant pain there. Athletes endure this all the time. So this is a really important one to keep up on. Right? So what we're going to do here, this is called the dragon pose. It's basically a lunge. I'm going to show you from a couple of different angles here. It's not the front leg that's going to get it, it's going to be the back leg. Actually, maybe I'll flip over here. So when I'm doing the dragon pose here, my right leg is behind me, my left leg's in front. So it's going to be right here in my right hip that gets the stretch. And again, there's a reason why I'm doing this, to isolate this particular area. So you can hang out here if you'd like to. You can have this nice straight on line going. Or you can play around with where exactly you are in the pose. And this is why I wanted to show you from a different angle here. Instead of just going directly down and straight, if you turn into your front leg a little bit, you can work your hip flexor a little bit more and also stretch your obliques, which is your side body, some of your core muscles. Get really tight. Okay, so this is just a different way to work this area, but it's really important for us, right? It's really important to keep up on. So again, any athlete is going to get tight here. It is guaranteed. It does not matter what sport you play. If you play football, basketball, soccer, baseball, softball, track, especially track. If you're a runner, you're going to get tight here. Right? So make sure that you keep up on these just to protect them, make sure that they're flexible, and to prevent that back pain, especially the L5-S1 pain. You can hold this a little bit longer if you'd like to, if you're just now getting comfortable. But if you are ready to come out of the pose, there's time. You can just real slow, use your hands, push out. Oftentimes you want to stretch out that front leg, we call it a runner stretch, but then eventually bring it back into a child's pose. We'll take a moment here. Other side. And I'll show you again from the different angles here, but well actually I wasn't really picky about it, but I'm on my left side now. But just remember, it is your back leg that gets the stretch, not the front one. The back one is going to get the quad right there through the hip flexor. And again, I want to show you from the other side, because instead of just going directly head on with this pose, you might find out that you want to turn into your front leg. So if your right leg is in front, if you turn to the right a little bit, it's going to open up that back left hip flexor ever so slightly. And it's really just because of a tilt in your pelvis. That's what all poses do. They all have some kind of tilt going on to affect the stretch in a certain area. But again, this is definitely something you want to make sure is mobile. You don't want to suffer from back pain and then not be able to play. It's not fun, right? And I know, just speaking from experience, when I was young, when I was a kid and I was a teenager, I didn't bother stretching. I thought it was for the birds, right? I was like, this is dumb. I'm loose, I'm ready to go. I'm in game shape all the time. But if I had the knowledge that I did 10 years ago, I would have been doing something like this consistently, especially before a practice or before some kind of game. Just thinking, increasing your mobility and your flexibility, you're just going to be loose in general. And because of that, you're also less likely to injure yourself, right? When you have increased mobility, you're not going to hurt yourself as much as you would if you were really tight in these areas. When you're ready, there's your time. Unless you're getting comfortable, in which case stay there a little longer. But if you are ready, real slow, letting yourself out. Make that runner stretch, and then come back, maybe into a child's pose if you feel like you need it. We have one more pose left. We have to do our back bend, and it's going to be the Sphinx pose. This is where you lay on your stomach, you prop up onto your forearms and your elbows. This is it. This is the pose. It's not a stretch or anything. You should just feel this dull pressure right there in your lower back. Anything sharp, though, you come down. All right, sharpness isn't therapeutic for you. But again, the reason why I wanted to do this, even though this isn't really about the hips, because we bend forward, we did a forward bend and stretched our inner thighs. You know, I want to make sure if we bend forward, then we should be bending backward. That's just the two motions that your spine makes. And I mean, even though this doesn't really, again, come down to the hips, but in really flexibility, I mean, think of every activity that you do that's going to involve back bending in some way. You know, if you're a dancer or something like that, you're going to be doing back bends all the time. Right? Any gymnast, they will do back bends all the time. Right? So we want to make sure that if we are going to bend backward, we go just to our fullest degree, which for me isn't a lot. I don't have that deep of a back bend. But it's because of my spine, right? It's not because of my flexibility. I've been doing yoga for 10 years. This hasn't changed since the day one, right? I've been doing it almost every single day for that amount of time. But again, it's a skeletal thing, not flexibility. When you are ready, there's time. Go ahead and just lay down on your stomach. It's going to feel nice to do a gentle forward bend, you know, at some point. Child's pose is most often the go-to. But we're at the end of our practice. If you're ready for Shavasana, for corpse pose, you can do a few things if you like to. You can just lay down on your mat, or you can sit upright like you're in meditation, just wherever you're most comfortable. Go there and then close your eyes. Nothing to see at this point, just more to feel and pay attention to. And again, focus on the breath. Breathe low in your belly and low in your diaphragm. Turn your senses, your awareness within. And for these last few minutes, just observe the differences you've made in your body, even with this 30-minute practice. No formal ending to our practice. You keep your eyes closed as long as you'd like. That's officially all that I have for you. I want to thank you all for watching and sharing your practice with me. It has been my pleasure. Namaste.